Movies and games, technology too. It's Markus talking nerdy, some other musical stuff. I finally had my Dolby Cinema cherry popped recently. I didn't get to see Batman like I wanted, but I did see The Lost City, which I knew nothing about going in, but it was actually a pretty good movie, but that's not really the point of this episode. I'm just giving my 2 cents on the theater itself. So as we discussed in the AV rant, Dolby has their own dedicated auditoriums that use Dolby Vision in their projection, and they use Dolby Atmos in their sound. And they also have luxury seating, which not a lot of people mention because obviously that's not the focus, but let's start there. So the seats were very comfortable. If you haven't had any sort of powered reclining chairs in a movie theater, it's a very, very nice experience. The theater I went to they were sort of a touch interface as opposed to physical buttons. And it's sort of an illuminated thing that when you touch it, it lights up and it has a little diagram of which motion the chair is going to have when you push the button. It took a second to get used to and understand, but once I got it, it was kind of nice. And then the light fades away after a few seconds, so it doesn't distract anybody. I would say they're the most comfortable seats I've had in a movie theater, except for in the same AMC theater I went to, they had, I'm not sure what they call them, but they were recliners as well, but they were spaced very far apart, which was kind of cool. And they reclined even further. So I was like almost laying down when I was watching the movie. And I think those were a little bit better, but the Dolby ones I think are definitely a step above normal theater seating, of course. Nothing to complain about, surely. So when I walked in to the theater, immediately I looked up and tried to see where all the speakers were and how many they had. I couldn't quite tell, but I think I saw 16 on the ceiling. I couldn't tell. I didn't know how many were in the front stage, but it definitely seemed like there were more than just your standard. And on that note, let's talk about the sound, because that's obviously why we're all here, right? The previews that they showed didn't seem to take advantage of the Atmos. They still sounded great, but it wasn't until like they had the final turn off your cell phone little video that it actually kicked in. They did do a nice little demo of the projection. I was kind of disappointed in the demo that they showed because it did show off the projection and the black levels, but it didn't really show off the sound that well, I thought. It's kind of difficult because I'm sure the movie that I saw is probably not the best first Dolby theater experience, but there were definitely moments I noticed the sound mix. But there was a lot of like chase scenes happening in the movie. So a lot of the motorcycle panning effects coming off the screen behind us or above us and then panning towards the actual screen. There was a scene in the movie that has a volcano, and that sounded really good. The one thing I really did notice about the sound, I was kind of surprised because I was expecting a lot more directionality and a lot more panning across the room. And again, it could have been just the movie I watched, but the thing that really stood out to me actually was the bass. During the previews, it seemed like it was a little bit overblown and maybe like almost like distorted a little bit, like it was just way overpowered. But when the actual movie was playing, it was chef's kiss. It was just the right amount. And it felt like, it almost felt like there was a subwoofer in my seat. The effect was very immersive. It definitely added to the experience for sure, especially anytime there was an explosion or any kind of rumbling from like a machine or anything like that. It had a really cool effect. I liked it. Definitely, hands down, the best bass I've ever had. The best I've ever had. Just somehow knew what I wanted when I wanted it, and I didn't have to say anything. It's beautiful. That was pretty much it in the sound department. I mean, the definition was good. The dynamic range was good. It does make me excited to see an action movie for sure. Like, I wish I could have seen Dune in that format. I'm very curious how that would have been. So as far as the visuals go, like I mentioned, the projector demo at the beginning, like, touted the black levels, which were impressive for sure. I was kind of hoping that the image would get brighter. The movie that I watched did have a good amount of dark scenes in it. Obviously, I'm not familiar with the movie more so than just this initial one viewing, so I don't have like a comparison, but I was trying to analyze the movie from an AV standpoint as I was watching it. which was hard to do because it was a very immersive experience, but I was trying for science. There was good contrast and definitely a lot of detail in the darkness. The highlights weren't kind of as highlighted as, like, for example, my TV at home. That's why I'm personally in the LCD camp versus OLED. The black levels are cool, but I care more about the highlights. There was one particular scene where it was kind of one of those, like, it was an outdoor scene and they had like kind of a bunch of string lights. That looked really good. And again, it's possible that the movie wasn't maybe the best viewing material, but I was hoping for a bit more brightness to make the highlights kind of pop. I hate to sound like a broken record, but I would have loved to have seen Dune and like the scenes where with the spice and see how that would have looked on this. Or the scenes where they're coming out of like a dark cave or dark building into the bright Iraqian day would have been really interesting to see. It was definitely good enough to make me want to go again. It was worth the price of admission for sure. And I definitely want to see more movies in that format. Having only seen one laser IMAX movie, I'm sure I'm not the only person to say this, but I definitely echo the sentiment that I've seen online of it would be great if somehow we could combine the laser IMAX with the Dolby Cinema, take the best parts of both. I guess that's a good problem to have, is you have to choose between whether you want, the IMAX screen versus, the Dolby sound and the Dolby chairs, I guess. I'm certainly looking forward to my next experience, and I'll probably have more to say about it when the time comes. Thanks for listening. Movies and games, technology too. It's Markus talking nerdy to you. Some other musical stuff.
Do you enjoy the show and want to help it grow? Don't hesitate. Like, share, and donate.